so choreography is a key word. Choreography is me. I choreograph everything.
Mm-hmm.
And we know what choreography is, you know. I guess it goes back to dance and how you do the dance. Everything I do in life is a choreography, how I make all the pieces play, how I work the mission, the choreography of a complicated mission, all the pieces in the mission control, and how do you make them as music? How do you make them dance together? So thank you. You're just bringing it out of me.
So welcome, long-term friend and colleague, Story Musgrave. Thank you so much for joining us.
Yes, sir. We've been at a long time.
It's been a long time.
Long time. Yeah.
How did
20-some years.
Easily? How did we met?
I think we got started serious at Discover magazine.
That's right,
Awards.
Paul Hoffman. Yep.
Yeah. I think there may have been some threads earlier, but I think that's the one where we really started to sync up.
Yeah, and it's been a love affair ever since.
It certainly has.
So,
Yeah.
Long ride, Disney, and now Applied Minds and so forth. It's
Meeting of the minds.
Yeah, well, I always thought it was kind of fun because we seemed to hit it off the first moment we met. There was always 3 things to talk about, which led to 10 things to talk about, and so forth.
And we hit it off with common friends. So
Yep.
you and I would have a common friend that we would resonate with.
Exactly, people like Paul McCready and,
yes,
you know.
Marvin Minsky.
Exactly.
And, a nice triangle that we would work together.
And it's always interesting because if you're not like everybody else, and you can define that any way you wish.
Sir, I'm not normal.
Exactly.
As you know, that's why I'm here.
And
I never aspired to being normal.
Exactly, it's overrated. And whether you come from another planet or whether everyone else comes from another planet doesn't matter. And which is why it's kind of nice when you meet people you have a resonance with, because, you know, it's less common than you might like it to be. And so I've always found that of the friends you make where you have that resonance, it's a lifelong friendship. And you can not see each other for 10 years and it's like yesterday.
I see.
I also find it's a little bittersweet because as you get older, they start dropping dead. And that's kind of a drag, you know?
They're dropping, so half of my emails are obits.
Yeah.
And every time I go to look up an old friend, you know, that's why I run into when you're in your 80s, which I am, it happens. So a lot of my Apollo flight controllers, you know, it just happens. And
Yeah.
40% of my high school class, 40% of my astronaut class, even though they were selected for longevity, they are gone too.
And it is what it is. I mean,
Yes.
that's life and
That's
so on.
life and that's death. You want to buy into life, that's what you buy
Exactly. And so, you
into.
know.
That's when sperm meets egg.
Right.
That's
Go
when
figure.
Death is not a stranger that comes to spoil the party, it is the party.
So on one level of that, at the same time, you know, you miss these guys and gals and you sort of say, you know, it's just like people like Marvin and so forth. It's so funny because they become, I was going to say so much a part of your life, just knowing they're there, so much a part of your life, that, you know, when they're gone, you just sort of say,
Yeah, it's the innovation that happens through network solutions that, you know, you just mentioned Marvin, and we know what we're talking about. We know the thoughts.
Exactly.
We know the themes.
Yep.
We know the whole thing, so it speaks to a dissertation.
Marvin would just keep throwing out ideas, and out of every 10 ideas, 8 of them just seemed kind of odd, or, you know, that's just Marvin. One of them caused you to really think about it and say, never really looked at it that way. And then the one other one changed the whole way you thought about everything. Did you find that? I always found it was very interesting because, you know, he would have a way, and you'd have to keep listening But, every so often he'd say something which would just, for me, give me a fundamentally different perspective on how to think about a problem or
Yes.
a topic.
Yes.
And also, it was the nice thing about a person like Marvin who collected people. There's just a lot of people in his lives, is that network led you to a whole bunch of other interesting people and
does.
connections.
It does. But I always felt exasperated that he wouldn't pick up on an idea that I had. If you're trying to come up with artificial intelligence, you should come up with a computer hardware system that looks like this. And they never have. They don't dare. So they still do a binary. They want to emulate artificial intelligence. So someday someone is going to come up with a hardware system that looks like this one.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because AI, machine vision, a whole bunch of things are in that category of have been right around the corner for 50 years.
Yes.
We're like, and all we need is a little more memory or a little faster processor, a few more things, and so it's.
But that's being stupid.
Yeah.
They want to do it stupid. So they claim they got intelligence because they win chess games. They don't win chess games smart. They just play all the possibilities. So they're big and they're stupid, but not smart.
But that qualifies them to be like some people. but the interesting thing is, you take biology and evolution, which is such an elegant way of designing things. I mean, you look at it and you just say, wow, that's impressive. But of course, the problem is it's complicated. And I think that's one of the things I learned from, Marvin, is when, talking about in his book, Society of Mind, which was one of those sort of, seminal things. And there were people for years who sort of said, well, there's the being human or being a living sentient creature is intrinsically something that a machine can never do. Okay.
You should never use the word never.
Yeah, well, exactly. And so when someone says something like that, you say, well, that's just kind of silly. You then hear, well, it's sort of mysterious in some way, it's holographic, so, it's that. And you say, okay, well, that just sounds a little too weird. And Marvin always had for me the perspective that it's comprehensible, it's understandable, it's emulatable, it's just very, very complicated. And, I think that's kind of nice because people often either say there's no answer, so just being intellectually lazy, you'll never be able to do it because, they don't want to think about it. Or it's some mysterious, unknowable thing, it's just lazy thinking. But the idea that it is knowable, but it's very, very complicated, I mean, that was helpful to me as just a way to think about it. And every few years, we learn something new about biology, the human body, so that you thought you understood it 20 years ago. And then you look back 20 years later and you realize you didn't have a clue and that you were looking through a little soda straw at one portion.
Yeah, so like this week, we found out what a lichen is.
Tell us about that.
Well, it's not just two things. It's not just one fungi and one algae. It's a threesome. That's what a lichen is. But they just assumed when they saw, a fungi and an algae in a symbiotic relationship, and that thing almost defined what symbiosis is. But now, this week, someone who has an incredibly common sense way of looking at things, because he's born and raised physically in that kind of world, he's in touch physically with that world, not in an abstract way. We find there's a third party in it. There's two fungi and one algae.
How interesting.
Yes. But biology is just spectacular. It's the future. But biology is absolutely spectacular, and the inspiration of biologically inspired design, to look at biology and say, how can I bring that world into
exactly
my
biomimetics,
world?
the idea of just
yes, and the entire evolutionary process, you just take one attribute and pull it out and say, what can that attribute do in my corporation or for me as an individual?
Yeah, it's fascinating. Well, and it lets you piggyback on that whole evolutionary process. So you sort of say, well, if it's good enough for evolution, it's probably a reasonable starting point for something else.
It's natural. It's natural too.
Well, and you just look at, birds evolved with relatively hollow bones to keep the weight down, and a whole bunch of things, which of course makes perfect sense. But that was always interesting about Paul MacCready's work, is he was always so fascinated watching birds fly and how it is, and just sort of saying, okay, well, let's understand what's actually going on here. And
Yeah, Paul MacCready's just another one. He's
Exactly.
another one for what we've all spoken about.
I always loved with Paul, it was so funny because you could get him going on something like Bernoulli, and Paul said, Bernoulli is not why airplanes fly. It's
I know, but we all had symmetrical wings. How many
Exactly.
symmetrical wings have I flown?
Exactly.
Bernoulli not working, you don't want Bernoulli to work.
Exactly.
So-
And it would infuriate him that schools teach Bernoulli is why planes fly. And he said, why planes fly is power. And you put enough power on a barn door and it will fly. It's
or a
called
brick.
power and angle of attack.
Yes.
And that's really all you need to fly. And it's so funny because we start telling kids this is why something happens, and the mere fact that it isn't, or in most cases it isn't, or in some cases it might be. But I was always fascinated, you looked back at the Wright brothers, where they were doing wing warping as a way of control, which is what birds and things do. And then we go through a period where we forget about all of that. And then you look at some of the most advanced designs coming out of NASA and other things now, and they're starting to look much more biological again. It's really a hoot. So how did you get started, and what, when you were a kid, were you interested in? And let's talk about that a little. What was early story? Because I'm not sure I know that much about early story.
Well, I gave that talk at Applied Minds, the About Me, and I did another one last month.
Yeah, you always do them when I'm out of town working.
I know, it's terrible.
So,
It's a year later.
exactly.
So Nartina says, man, you got to do this every year.
Exactly.
And so, but I was a product of child labor, and I mean real child labor. So abusive kind of child labor. But, thank goodness I was. So I was into
Teaches you how to do work.
work. Yes, I do work, but tying the knots in twine that where the 1943 machine could not, needle nose pliers, and driving every piece of equipment at 9, and the truck going down the road and the state police stop it because there's no head in the truck. When they open the door, young man, you can't be 16. No, sir, I'm 12. Be careful, son. They know they got to leave it alone because a farm going under. But then I was.
And where did you grow up? What?
This Western Massachusetts. And so it's the Norman Rockwell Museum. These days, they ended up with my old 1859 farmhouse. So the Norman Rockwell Museum in Stockbridge, Massachusetts.
Oh, interesting.
They have that now. And so then the farm went under anyway, despite my efforts, the heavy construction equipment.
And that happened a lot then. That was a bad time for
The
American.
farm went under, and of course in,
Yeah.
in Massachusetts, not many survive because you have such a long winter, such a short summer, and you have to get enough food in so the cattle will survive, will be able to live all winter time. And so, but then heavy equipment, because building the Massachusetts Turnpike, but we finished that, so I'm out of job. I never finished high school, so it's joined the Marines. And so.
That's all right. I never finished high school either, so
Yeah, I know,
I
sir.
feel better.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but thank goodness.
But I missed the Marines.
Well, you had your own Marines. But it dictated the path for me. And so Marines, of course, I went very fast with the Marines because I had the creativity, the farm kid, and the discipline. You never touch a machine unless it's the way they taught you. Otherwise, you're re-engineering a new machine, and you can't do that because you've negated all that pedigree of process. So that was Korea and aircraft carrier in the Kaneohe Bay. But then off to college and just do the details. But I had to beg my way into college. Well, it's just amazing for kids about there's alternative paths. So I didn't get accepted to any college, not even finished high school. And so, but I showed up anyway. So there's a day of admissions where the kids show up that did get accepted. Well, I showed up anyway because I want to go to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm asking on the sidewalk, who should I inquire about to matriculate here? And they said, well, they're looking at me funny, but well, it's the dean's office handles that. So I went right up to the dean and I knocked on the door and said, sir, I'm a product of child labor. And so I'm a teenage Marine. I just came back from the Marines. And you didn't take me, but I'm here ready to go to work. He said, of course. He did not hesitate a microsecond. He looked me, son of a gun. He went out front. He says, Gals, matriculate this person, enroll him. So, you know, life happens. So you have that kind of luck. But the critical thing here is, sir, that I got into the details. I had to survive on a farm, survive on the Marines. I had to survive. So I knew, and everything I've ever done in life is only one reason. I identify the factors that are going to influence the outcome. Mm-hmm. I get dropped on multiple playing fields in all these different domains and platforms, but there's one common thing. I got to identify the factors going to affect the outcome.
So how did you learn to think that way? Just happened, or?
I don't know.
What was it?
I'm trying to survive.
Yep.
But I'm trying to survive. You know, how do I get there? But I guess I had to be fairly mindful about that situation, because when I got to university, what am I going to do there? I'm going to do all those non-variables, all the dependent variables I got to control, and that's called multivariate statistics and the calculus of multiple variables. So I came in the back door of that just trying to survive.
And what were you interested in traditional subjects or topics? Was it what you needed to solve the problem at the time?
Interested in surviving.
Yep.
And so, well, basically, it's figure it out, get the job done, and move forward to the next mountain to climb. That's who I am. Mm-hmm. I figure it out, and that's everywhere I got. It's figure it out, get a job done, and move on. So that got me into that major at Syracuse.
Did you ever stop to ask yourself why you were driven to do this, or it just, you didn't think about it?
I am massively impulsive. About everything I do is impulsive, it's illogical, and it makes no sense. So I've got to admit that I lucked out. It's that I have lucked out. And a lot of people look at my life and say, no, Story, you made your own luck. That's not true. I lucked out.
Luck is a big deal. And it's a big, you know, the argument on one side is, well, the people who keep at it and all of that, it's statistics and so forth and so on. And all of that's true, but luck matters.
Luck matters.
It also matters, though, putting yourself where the action is.
Yes, sir.
Because if you're in the middle of nowhere, luck doesn't happen. In fact, nothing much happens. And so I think that that's, you know, it doesn't matter if you're an artist, an astronaut, a writer, a welder, going where there are other people doing it, that you draw energy from and they draw energy from you and all, that's really important.
Yes, that's it. It's going forward. It's jumping in. So it's on it's on July 22nd. What about July 23rd? What doors of opportunity will open for me? So you look at your total skill set, what you got to offer the world. Life is the talents that your parents gave you in terms of your genetics. It's different. Sometimes it's fair, sometimes it's over fair, but it's just life. It's your total experience, that's the experience, education, and where your passion leads you. So the passion and the dreams is critical for your choice of the next opportunities you're going to take on. Okay, I jump in, here's an opportunity, now I got to meet the challenges. And that's what life is. Life is a series of opportunities, doors that open for you, and meeting the challenge that's in that opportunity.
Yeah, and I think part of it is learning to pay attention so you notice when a door opens, because a lot of people don't. And then part of it, I think, is also, I mean, it strikes me there are a few different types of people in the world. You know, there are the people who, for lack of a better word, are kind of oblivious, right? There are things happening all around them they don't notice. And often as they get older, they get resentful that everybody else is getting the breaks and they're not, and so forth. And reality is, other people are noticing things that they're not. And, you know, these people can have difficult lives and end up in jobs they don't love, and it's just work. And in fact, they look forward not to going to work, but to getting home from work. They look forward to retiring, you know, and going to that, which is the best death sentence I can think of. But then if like this were a food pyramid, the next one up is people who are reactive. So that someone comes up to them and says, let's go to Paris tonight. And the people down below who are oblivious will give you 100 reasons why that's a bad idea. I don't like French food. I don't have a passport. You know, I don't like the color of the flag. You know, they'll have 100 reasons, all of which sound perfectly rational to say why they said no. That next level up of the people who I call reactive people are the ones that say, sure, that sounds like a nice idea. Don't have a passport, but I'll bet I can get one tomorrow morning if I've got an airline ticket, you know, and so forth. And they have much more interesting lives, and they take advantage of the fact that, you know, they look at a sign that says help wanted, you know, fry chef, and they say, well, how hard can it be to be a fry chef? Let's see if I can, you know, get this job. That the next tier up on that pyramid is what I call opportunistically reactive people, who basically use what life presents them, luck, and turn it into something even bigger. So let's go to Paris. How about Beijing? Okay, let's go to Beijing. You know, so you're a pilot and you're testing out an aircraft, you got to put some mileage on. Yeah, we can do Beijing or so forth. And these people tend to be creative in a way that they take those opportunities that simply present themselves and they multiply it. So help wanted fry chef, you know, well, that's nice. How about a manager? You're looking for a manager? I think, you know, I know how to run this. Well, have you ever run something like this before? Nope, but I think I understand, you know, what it is. There's like that. Or the other is, well, yes, kind of, you know. And then the little tippy top of the pyramid, which is really rare, are people that are or learn how to be proactive, where they don't need any of those outside influences. They can just wake up in the morning and sort of say, might be a nice day to go to Paris, and put it together. You don't see those people terribly often, and it's something they often come to later in life, and you know, as they get more comfortable, because I think of those 4 levels, you know, you can work your way up, and you can sort of tell yourself, well, gee, I think I should be more proactive, and you find a way to make that work and put it together. But it seems like fear, whether it's fear of the unknown or uncertainty. Some people thrive on uncertainty. Other people are terrified of uncertainty. I've always found that I sort of gravitate to shaking things up when they become stable. So you work in theater, you do a bunch of different plays, and now it's time to go work in film. And you work in film, and now it's time to work in theme parks. You work in that. You know, spend your life building a company, great, let's sell the company and go on to, you know, I sort of find that I get restless quickly once I think I understand how to do something. Are you like that? Where it just sort of, okay,
it's
next.
called restless.
Yeah, exactly.
Restless.
And you don't feel that way when you're learning, but when you feel you've mastered is the wrong word, but when you've got it under control. I think there are some people who are born craftsmen. I'm not one of those, meaning building the same rocking chair perfectly 100 times. Some people find the craft of being able to execute that very satisfying. For me, I'd rather design a table and then a chair and then a building and then something else. So for me, I don't consider myself a craftsperson from the perspective of wanting to refine it and each time make it a little better, and all of that. I'd rather just, okay, did that, wasn't as good as I would have liked, but it's okay. Let's go to something else. What about you? I mean, it seems like you have, you know, I'm sure you've heard 100 times how, you know, how did you do 20 different lives and careers, you know, all at one point. Was it restlessness, or was it a different drive, or was it what made you decide, for example, to accidentally become a medical doctor as well as an astronaut, as well as a pilot, as well as, you know, things which people don't generally associate as being a path, right? I mean, that's not a common path.
It's not a path.
Exactly.
It's forks in a road. It's impulsiveness. It's running into a
But
place.
most people don't have the impulse to become a medical doctor.
I didn't want to become a medical doctor. I was in the biggest computers in the world, at IBM's 409 at UCLA. I was in operations research, again, dealing with the stupid details again, because the details are going to get me if I don't get after them. That was operations research. And a Western Data Processing Center was there. So I knocked on the door. I want to work here. It's why I came here. What do you know about computers? Nothing. Well,
Come on in.
I'll work for
Exactly.
nothing. I'll work
Yeah.
for nothing. I'll do your cards and I'll do your tapes and I'll do all that. So I was an IBM 409 operator, compiler, and assembler. That is what led to medicine.
So let's
I
get the
could
chronology.
not get off the brain. If computers work this way,
Then how does
how does a brain work? And so here is a leap, and I could not get that out of my head. I need to know what's in the brain.
So the sequence was Marine Corps and then computer science, or what, was there a gap
Off
in between?
to school and deal with the factors. That's multivariate statistics and calculus of complex variables. Just to deal with the cats. I got to herd the cats. How do I deal with the cats?
So for you, that was the framework and the construct that you felt you needed to be able to think through these things.
Yes, but when I found out if you could quantitate them, there's a math to deal with it. Plus, I like that kind of, I am a multivariate kind of person, as I always have been. I can't get away from that, it's who I am. And so SAS, statistical analysis, I don't own stock in them, but I think they got the best software programs for dealing with all that. And today, I go and talk to them. So I never let anything go. I have not let go multivariate thinking. And I still do that. Mm-hmm. And that's how I got places.
Okay, so then the step was from understanding the math and the calculus, where's the biggest computer in town, and how do I learn how that works?
Yes, so I was there. But then I started reading interdisciplinary. Something in my brain said, I need to get inside the head and find out how that's working. So I started reading interdisciplinary fields like Wiener's cybernetics, like Ashby's Design for a Brain, these things. And then I said, doggone it, that's it. I got to go there.
Yep,
So I needed to do pre-med, which I didn't have, and off I go.
interesting. And while you're doing pre-med, you figured, what the hell, let's
We did pre-med.
med.
And where do we do pre-med? Because we're driving from UCLA, the West Coast, to the East Coast. I'm going to jump into Syracuse. I'm already matriculated. I graduated from there. I can start my pre-med, chemistry, physics, and all that stuff there. From East to West Coast, I ran into a town called Marietta. It was the conjunction of the Muskingum and Ohio River, and it had brick streets and elm trees and all the stuff. And my God, I said, look at the college. What is this beautiful kind of place? So I found a missions building. I mean, do you have pre-med here? Of course we do. And a professor, it happens to be at work today. Why don't you run over and see him? I saw him and I came back and I applied. You're in. This is totally impulsive behavior. It's massively impulsive behavior. Well, what is this place? What is Marietta College? Are they going to help me get into medical school? It's totally impulsive. But sir, I'm driven by that guy.
Yep.
I'm driven by the heart and how I feel about things. So I listen to how my body reacts to different situations and the choices. So my picking out the choices of opportunities in life is mostly driven, at least in part, not just by the analytics of the mind, but by this guy. How do I feel about this stuff? Mm-hmm. So I felt about this place and I went there and it worked. But when I applied to medical school, I got in all of them. So I didn't worry about, is Marietta going to be accepted by, I got in every medical school in the country. Because I put down, I filled out their applications, but I had a sheet that I laid on top. And who am I? I'm a product of child labor. I was a crew chief with the Marines. I drove tanks going through college. I'm a heavy equipment operator. That's what I put down. I'm going to figure this place out. I'm going to get the job done. I'm going to figure the brain out, and I'm going to fix it. Well, they knew in medical school he's not going to figure the brain out, and he's not going to fix it, but he thinks he is.
Right.
So they look at this person. He's a nutcase. But man, we need him because we need someone to carry the flag for us. Mm-hmm. He's going somewhere. We don't know where. He's going to carry the flag.
Interesting. So where did you end
So
up?
the important thing is there that you're competing on a different playing field. You're not competing on being a 4.0, which I never was. And my MCAT, my medical college admission test, I don't even know what that score was, whether good or bad. But it's not how I'm getting into medical school.
Yeah. Where'd you go to medical school?
Columbia.
Columbia, yeah.
New York City.
And how did you like New York?
I adored New York. New York was a huge attraction. I'm a country kid. Man, I'm a farm kid.
The big city.
I got to the city and said, wow, what a place. But that's, I think, part of life. I was so excited about New York. But of course, as soon as I met the people, I stopped all my other interviews. I said, this is it, folks.
This is the place, yeah.
This is the place. But New York City was a part of that attraction because I adored New York. And going to medical school in New York was just a perfect fit.
Well, and that's what's special about the great cities in the world, is they attract top talent who want to go find out how good they are. And it's happening in literature, and it's happening in theater, and it's happening in science, and it's happening in education. That's what makes the great cities great, is that, you know, it's this confluence of people, ideas, whether it's people embracing history or people rejecting history. I mean, I was always fascinated because my dad was an abstract expressionist painter, and he was part of the New York School abstract expressionists in a way that, you know, they were inventing abstract art. And it's always amazed me that, you know, prior to that, abstract art didn't exist. And people had to sit down and say abstraction. And of course, they were rejected by everybody, and it was, you know, things. But it's so interesting. It's like inventing a new form of music, or inventing spaceflight, or inventing something like this, where a collection of people get together in a special place. And the special place is what attracted them, but then they made it special by their presence. And, you know, it can be a city, it can be, you know, NASA and the Cape, it can be a collection of things. But when you get that critical mass of curious, smart people, it's really exciting. You know, and it just, you get the sense of how could you not be there. So, how did you like being a doctor? Did you ever think that you should go practice, or was the notion as this was just a skill set that you needed to be thinking about bigger things?
I didn't know where anything was going. Massively impulsive. Massively impulsive. I never know where I'm going next. But the very first week of medical school, I went there for the brain. Mm-hmm. And that's where they took me, for the brain. Neurosurgical research lab, there's a door, going to class. That's me, and that's why I came here.
Sounds good.
To knock on the door and say, here I am and I want to work here. That's why I came here. And you're looking at me funny, and it happens to be Don Perper. He ended up not in neurophysiology, but he was the dean at Einstein, longest standing dean in American history for 27 years. That's who he ended up being. But I was want to work here. Well, who are you? I'm freshman medical student. Well, we don't have students in here. We got postdoc fellows. Well, I'll figure this place out. I mean, I'll wash the bottles, I'll sweep the floor, okay? And I'll work for nothing. You're hired. So within a month, I was really rolling. For pragmatic reasons. So we are trying to get intercellular recording. I got to be a little fast on this. You record one cell and you stimulate different parts of the brain. So there's 10 billion cells, but you're trying to work out the network and how they're connected and how they react. They weren't getting anywhere in the lab. And so there's a machine in which you establish the heat input. So you have capillary tubes, and you put tension, and you put heat, and they end up being, you know, micron size, or less than a fraction of a micron to get in a given cell. Well, this was not going well, but I took this whole thing apart. I put it under a microscope. So I got the rheostat for temperature in this hand, I got the tension in this hand, and I control how this is going real time. Mm-hmm. So I was able to create whatever electron I wanted, and then I noticed when at 4 or 5 p.m. when they went home, I would stick it in the brain of different animals, and I would get the relationship between the structure of the electrode and how it functions. So I got that down. So I am producing perfect electrodes. I'm handing that to them. I tried to teach them, but no, you know, I couldn't. And then the next thing is I did, and I took over the experiment at 4 or 5, and I'm getting reams of data. Data is a film recording of a tectonics oscilloscope. So this is 1960.
Yep.
So we don't have digital world. I am doing stuff nobody else can do. From that point on, for 4 years, I was on every single paper that came out of that lab. And so, and I'm creating my own research too. I'm helping full professors of neurosurgery get their job done. Because I'm a tank driver, because I'm an aircraft crew chief, I'm a farm kid. I've got this pragmatic sense of what it takes to control the variables, get the job done, and execute. And so, and I'm flunking out of medical school. Out of a class of 140, I'm 140th. And the poor dean, I got an Ivy League dean who's in tears. I got him on his knees and I got him in tears. Every D I get, he calls me a story. Please give us just a little more. He knows what I'm doing. My reputation's all over this school. And I got approved for neurosurgical residency as a sophomore, 5 years ahead of when you normally get there. I got a handle. I've done what I'm doing in there. So again, it's a different path. I took a different path than being 4.0. I'm flunking out of medical school, but my God, they love me.
Yeah.
And the dean is saying, story.
Yeah, I get what the program
He knows.
exactly.
He knows who I am. He wants to hang on to me.
Yeah.
And so I graduated 140th out of 140, but that's how life goes.
Yeah. Well, you've said a couple of times, which really resonates with me, show up and work for nothing, because that's what I did my whole life.
Work.
Exactly. And it was just go work at a surplus store on Canal Street, because it's the way I learned about machines, and so forth. And I remember the first paid job I had was $1 an hour. And I'm here to tell you, it takes a long time to accumulate wealth being paid $1 an hour. But I would just show up on television commercials and show up in theater and show up in other stuff. And it's just, what can I do? Or how can I help with this or do that? And people often ask me, well, how do I get started? And my view is just be good at anything. And show up and do it.
Something.
Exactly.
Just do it.
Exactly.
What kind of pilot? How'd you take up flying? I pumped gas at the airport.
It's disturbing that, it's disturbing that for all intents and purposes, surplus stores don't exist the way they used to when there were Canal Street and Cortlandt Street, where you could just go down and hang out. And it was great that you could buy these wonderful machines for pennies on a dollar. But what's even more great is the people you met there, the regulars who would show up at on the weekend and do all of this. Because they were a bunch of really interesting characters. They were people who, I remember one guy who his entire apartment was filled with surplus. When I say filled, I mean there were little corridors you could work your way through. I'm surprised the building didn't collapse from the weight of the electronics all over the place. But you learned from them. And there are people that I know to this day who ended up running big businesses and doing things like that, which they started there and they learned there and they got to understand how machines work, because they could take surplus machines that were discarded and take them apart, just like on a farm. You learn how an internal combustion engine works, because if you don't learn how it works, it doesn't work, and you're the one who has to fix it. And so I think that we're losing sight of that, and especially when it comes to design, whether it's design of machinery, aesthetics, etc., you have to be there doing work. You can't learn it in a book. You have to learn it with your hands on and how many times you're taking something apart and there's a close quarters thing, and if you put your wrench on it and press on it, the wrench will slip and you will bash your knuckles into the side of the thing. And you do it and prove that you were right.
Well, you wear gloves.
Exactly. It's part of the process. You just, and it's been interesting for me, because I would you have kids who come to work for you who have straight A's from the best schools and have never built anything. And it's a huge learning curve, because they never got the instinct of how things work. They don't have a sense of how big a motor it takes to do something. And so as a result, they often make huge mistakes because to them, a motor this big and a motor this big are the same. The fact that one puts out 10 times the power, well, if they had built things with motors, they'd never make the 1 decimal point mistake that they made in their calculation, because you make those kind of mistakes, but you would never make the mistake. Someone says, oh, well, I've got a thing and I've got to lift 10,000 pounds up here, and they came up with a little motor this big. You'd say, come on, this motor's never going to do that. So I think it's a challenge in how we educate people these days, that there's a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, Marvin Minsky, my partner Danny Hillis, the Megs, grew up in surplus stores. We grew up just buying stuff, taking it apart.
You took me to one.
Exactly, and putting it together. And it doesn't mean that that's the only way to learn, but it was an important way to learn, and it's one which is disappearing. It's coming back a little through eBay, but it's not the same to buy on eBay as it is to go to a big surplus store and just climb over piles of stuff. How did you get started flying? What was the interest in that?
I taught myself how to fly. This is not a good story, but it turned out fine. I was driving everything on a farm, and I had to do that by myself. No instruction, just go out and do it from the age of 9. And so I showed up at this airport in Great Barrington, Mass., a grass field, and I started borrowing someone's airplane. And to this day, I don't know who owned that airplane.
Right.
But the other
Exactly.
people around, I'm just taxiing around. And then I start to dance. And so I bounce around and I'm doing the dance. If you can manage a tail dragger on the ground, you can fly it. So the people never expected me to hold a stick in my lap and go flying, but I went flying. And they were amazed, and of course I had no problem coming back. When I got up in the air, I did notice right off, if I don't keep sight of the field, I will get lost, because I'm not used to this viewpoint and I have no maps. So other than that, but that's how I got started in the business. And of course the Marine Corps, as a crew chief and as a mechanic in the Marine Corps, I was responsible for signing off airplanes as airworthy to go to war with one stripe. It's called Private Musgrave at the age of 18. And so it has to be done right. And so there's only one way to do maintenance. You're very creative as a farm kid of what's wrong, what you got to do, but you're never creative when you touch the airplane. That's pedigree of process. And so, but that's, and then of course, as soon as I left the Marines, I took up flying. I don't know why. There's no space program. People ask you, do you always want to be an astronaut? In the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, I did not, because they didn't exist. Space had to come much later in my life.
And so when you took up flying, what was that? What did you do? Did you go to school for it, or how did that manifest?
I didn't go to school. When I did the citation, I did aviation safety. I did them, and I just put myself in the production line. The way you went was a wonderful way. The first time you ever see the airplanes, you check ride. But I just went to the field, pumped gas, and I became a charter pilot, flight instructor. I just kept accumulating skills, which I do in life. But I didn't know where it was going. It was just plain old fun. It was fun, but it was paying for itself. Later on, it's just luck. Luck matters. And so later on, when I applied to NASA, I got into some airline transport rated pilot. I didn't know where it was going.
But obviously, when NASA happened, that gave you a huge leg up, because
that's when I left my training, my surgical training. I was heading for neurosurgery, neurophysiology for the brain. And NASA came along, my God, scientist-astronaut. Okay, another big fork in the road.
And were most of the other astronauts, did they come from a military background, or what was the typical of your colleagues at that time? Yeah.
My own selection process, not one of them was a pilot, none of them were military. So we had 6,000 applicants. National Academy of Science cut that down to 70 people, from 6,000 to 70.
That was quick. Exactly.
Yeah, so that's a big whack,
Yeah.
and they sent the 70 to NASA for final selection. So the first thing was your scientific credentials. What kind of science might you do? I'm sure National Academy looked at your operational excellence too. Would you be comfortable in that kind of world?
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they looked at that. But all the essays you had to write for the research you had done, your papers you had published, and the research you planned to do in spaceflight, that was the primary selection process.
And how much flying had you done before NASA versus once you got to NASA?
I have 18,000 hours in total, and half of it's civilian and half of it's military government. So I was airline transport pilot when I joined NASA. They sent me to the Air Force to teach me how to fly and to get my military wings and to get jets, which I didn't have the money to have as a civilian.
That jet fuel thing is kind of pricey,
Yeah,
isn't it?
jets are, I had no money. I've never had money.
So, flying, clearly you were a natural. It just, your brain did that, right?
My brain did flying. It did flying, and so I'm just fortunate that that's one thing I did right. There's a lot of failures I've had, but that world worked.
Yeah, so your gift for that translated to being able to quickly learn about new aircraft. How many different aircraft types have you been certified in?
Well, certified, I have 160 in all, but sometimes it's just, going across the Atlantic, they give you some 747 time or something. But certified, maybe that's 15 or 20.
Mm-hmm. And so did you find when you were flying against other military pilots, military trained pilots, did you find a different thought process, or how did that work? Because clearly you must have been put with, for lack of a better word, what the NASA process picked as highly gifted flyers, right?
They were very good, but I'm not bragging, we're just talking. Within the Air Force, I got the highest academic and flying scores in the history of the Air Force. I set all the records, and the records still hold.
It's a good start.
But it's because I'm not normal.
Exactly.
But
So tell me why.
It's a very interesting story, and it's totally related as the way I got to know Wernher von Braun, who is one of my ultimate heroes in spaceflight and in life in general, for being science fiction, for being a visionary, an incredible project manager, a charismatic communicator about everything. When he finally got to, he would have, if we just let him do it, he would have orbited us in 1950, 7 years ahead of Sputnik, if we let the man do it. We didn't think it was important until it happened. He would have been 7 years ahead of Sputnik. When he finally got to be director at Marshall Space Flight Center, his office is up here looking at the Redstone Field down there, and he's watching the T-38, and he was an airline transport rated pilot. So von Braun himself was a very experienced pilot. He jumped in. He did the water tank. He got in suits. And so, like we've been talking about,
How many people don't realize that?
yeah, he did all that stuff. And it's the way he lived, and it's the way he was so good at things. The rest of those Northrop T-38s, the Redstone runways there, they flew behind him, so he didn't see them. They drug it out 2 miles, made an orthogonal turn. Orthogonal means right angle turn. And then it's a right angle turn to base, and they drag it in 2 miles. Every now and then, this airplane goes right by his window, and opposite the numbers, it's a continuous rolling turn. Boom, and it lands. And he is also incredibly astute, and he notices no one flying the airplane. There's no autopilot, but he notices there's no one doing this. So somebody is fingertips. Somebody is working the basic stability of the airplane. Once they tip it over and say, please, I would like you to do this, it's moved with the fingertips, and after a while he can't stand it. He knows that's one person. He calls the airfield. It's none of my business. This is Dr. von Braun. Could you tell me who just landed the airplane? Story Musgrave, sir. Ask him what he's doing for lunch. From that point on, every time he saw this, I had lunch with the man. And so that was my privilege of getting to understand his project management, how, when he's told go to the moon, 3 years later a Saturn lifts, it's 3 years till it lifts off. The guy, he moved. We moved in the 60s, so incredibly privileged that I got to really know him well, and of course we hit it off. So, but that was the flying. And the flying is fingertips. I'm not going to control this airplane. I'm going to put a request into the airplane.
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're using is the basic stability, which is engineered into the airplane, and it's a lot better than you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a request. And so
The notion being a well-designed airplane wants to fly.
And, yeah. And out in Wyoming, I'm at a dude ranch out here, and they asked me if I want to go herd these wild horses in. Well, sure, I'll do anything you want. So I get on this horse, and I'm going to do the cutting, the herding. So what do? Nothing. This gal, this mare, knows what she got to do. Leave her alone. So I did nothing. She picked out the hierarchy. She's number 2 in the hierarchy. She picks out number 1, get your butt in there. You see? And she got authority now. She's not just number 2, because I got a human on my back. She got number 1, the rest followed. And the rest of the cowboys, how could you possibly have done that? You did it much faster, because I did nothing. Because I understood this horse knows where it's going. I played polo too. It's the same thing, leave the horse alone. The horse knows where the ball. The only thing I got to know is the horse setting me up for underneath the neck or down this side. So that's a basic principle in life. But it's really where I got. It's being mindful about what is going on here.
So, did you ever find yourself in an experience where those instincts didn't work and you had to come up with a plan B? An aircraft that just didn't want to fly, or you didn't agree with you, or because you get these set of instincts that guide you and work, but sometimes they don't, right? Or has that not been your experience?
I'd have to stretch myself to go find some. I've had a lot of starts. I've had a lot of starts where here's an opportunity, I jump in, no, it's a non-fit. And so what I do tell people is, you got to play to your strengths. What are you good at? But what are you good at? What do you got to experience at? And where's your heart lead you? So it's what are you good at and what your passions want to do. Those are the 2 key things for, should you do it.
So tell me about, I'm fascinated with your scores, which means you are flying against other top pilots, right? That's how it works. So what did you do that's different? Because there are obviously 2 ways that you end up with top scores. One is you just do everything they do better, possible. But the other is you just do something different, right? Which gives you the desired outcome, but you're not doing it the way they're doing it.
Different.
That would be my guess, right? Is that a fair guess?
So, sir, a key word is differentiation in the world of business, in the world of you as an individual. I never competed 4.0 because I never had a 4.0. I was 2.0. So I'm not competing with grades, and I don't compete on any other medical college admission test. I don't compete with that. But it's not intended that I don't. It's just I'm me, and I do things different. Differentiation is absolutely key. But we used to play war, and so I did my thing with the Air Force, and I was an experienced pilot. That helped, but that doesn't push the level of performance up to here. The fact you have some experience, you got to push the level up to there. But after getting back to NASA, we would fight sometimes. So a fight is, you would cross like this, and as soon as you arrive here, the fight begins. So you're at 90 degrees, that's where the fight begins. And you want to get on someone else's tail and shoot them down. So that's called, it's combat, that kind of stuff. Well, I know what the other person's going to do. It's called testosterone. In case we're R-rated here, it's called testosterone. I know when the war begins what they're going to do. They're going to do max power and pull hard Gs.
Because that's what fighter pilots do.
Because that's a fighter.
Right,
sorry.
Exactly.
So people are going to hate me out there. But anyway, Yes, that's what you do when you go to war. It's max power, it's full afterburner, and pull hard J's. What do you think I do? I pull it to idle, you know? I pull it to idle. And so, if someone's on my tail like that, and so there's a different way to play. You start like this and you find out if you can stay that way. But I'll pretend that I'm testosterone and I go, wow, well, I know what he's doing. I'm going to do this and pull harder and use more power. But I pull it to idle and I push. Instead of pull for more G's and maximum power, I go to idle and I push negative G's. And I've also timed from
Which I'm told, by the way, pilots hate, by and large.
Hate all that stuff.
Don't like the way it feels, don't like the, you know.
But I've also timed how long it takes them to understand. I start the clock at the same time. I've got the psychology down. How long does it take them to understand this is not what's expected? And so it happens to be, you know, about 10 seconds. So, bang! Okay, I'm going to outpull him. It's full power and pull hard, but I'm in idle and I'm pushing. And so I've gotten the error. I've known that down from statistics. And then, as soon as the clock is, then I'm full power and pull hard, and I'm on the tail.
And it worked. Exactly.
That's kind of predicting. It's kind of knowing what the competition's going to do. It's cheating, yes, I know.
Seemed to work.
And they come back all angry. You cheat story.
Right, exactly.
It's all fair in love and war.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
interesting. So tell me about NASA, because it was clearly one of the great organizations in the history of technology development, research, and discovery. It attracted the best and the brightest from a whole collection of places. You know, when I was growing up, you know, everyone knew the names of all the astronauts, what they were doing. Everybody, you know, watched Walter Cronkite, you know, reported and so forth. Yeah, exactly.
The building's coming down.
And you were all part of that. That must have been very exciting to be part of the best team there is. Did you feel that? Was it apparent? Was it obvious as being part of it? Yep.
Yeah, I was there. So the spirit and getting the job done and going and getting there. It's Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, halfway to our first space station in 8 years.
Yeah, which is astonishing.
Astonishing.
Especially now
SLS
because
now is 20 years.
I mean, to be unkind, NASA can't get a proposal out on the street, bid it, and award it in 8 years.
You know, or it's not going to happen anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So what happened?
I think it's vision leadership, but it's Washington. So I have to say it's Washington. It's NASA and Washington. So I call it Washington. Mm-hmm. It's not just NASA, it's Washington. But NASA has to be separate from Washington, and they have to come up with their own vision, a very artistic, powerful mission. Give that to the public and make the public will make Washington make it happen. So you and I have been through that several times before, you know, in our own vision of things. So it gets down to vision, it gets down to leadership. NASA needs to create the vision. And apart from the administration, apart from Congress, who are not visionary, they're never intended to be visionary, sell it to the public and make it happen. When we came off the moon, it was a difficult vision. If Kennedy had lived, I think he would have joined with the Russians. There are nuanced communications that showed he would have joined the Russians on the way to the moon. Mm-hmm. The right thing to have done back then is, we'll help you get there. Oh, we don't care. We're not there to win. We will help you get to the moon even if you beat us there. See, that's a different way of thinking.
Sure.
But people would have understood. The world would have understood. My goodness, the United States helped the Russians to beat them? Oh my goodness, who's the victor? We are. Mm-hmm. And so, you see, I think he would have done that. All the kind of nuanced data that I have says he wanted to do that if he hadn't been stopped along the way. But when you win hands down going to the moon, it's time to go home, because people, spaceflight is for international competition. And we've won, so let's go home. So it created a difficult vision then, but we needed a vision. But we let von Braun go. You can use the F word if you want. It's called fire.
Yep.
6 months after he got to the moon. We don't need you anymore. You can't do that. And I know, because I knew him. But it's also in the literature.
Effectively, we did the same thing with Robert Oppenheimer. We did the same thing with...
It's a literature and a biography. We sent him to headquarters. We took a rocket land. Who's working for you? Nobody. You're there alone. What are you doing? He had to leave. So you can't do that.
Yeah, those are tragic.
Whether his German connections, which don't bother me, he's got to work for his boss, and that's it. It's that simple. He's working for his boss. No matter how bad his boss is, he's working for his boss. And so, or he was too powerful.
It seems, I didn't know him, never met him. But I have his slide rule and his Explorers Club card, so I feel connected a bit.
Oh, you knew?
Yeah, I do. I'll show you next time you're out. And what was interesting to me is that this is a sort of person, and you get criticism as this, the German Nazi connection, etc. And so on one level, the interpretation is this person was an opportunist who just, went whichever direction they needed to. The other interpretation is this was a person with a passion for going to space, and whatever path it took to get him there was the path he was going to take, or be left out, which would probably be accurate.
Or be executed.
Yeah, exactly. History judges fairly, unfairly, but what was interesting about whether it was the Werner von Braun's, the J. Robert Oppenheimers, Hyman Rickover, the Nuclear Navy, there are a collection of things where you have people who are, for lack of a better word, a force of nature, a Steve Jobs, you can name it. They're often not terribly nice people to work for. They can be psychos, or they can be maniacs, or they can be this. But they kind of, the term often used is distort reality around them so that people believe that if they're part of this, they will succeed and be able to do something extraordinary. And that's a very important effect because, you look at something like, remember for years, nobody could break the 4-minute mile. The notion is this as fast as a human being can run. And then one day someone did. And now, my daughter is breaking the 4-minute mile. Is that? And, the sound barrier, my uncle, Roy Farron, was at North American Aviation, and he was flight test director for the X-15 and the XB-70 and the B-1 was his last program. And so he worked with all of the top test pilots, Scott Crossfield, all these other, Chuck Yeager, et cetera, And on the internet are sort of the stories of him taking the first flight on the B-25 Mitchell. He was the co-pilot, and he was the engineer, I think, on the first flight. And this was a time where in aviation, people were going out to Edwards and breaking records every week. And, now, I remember my uncle telling me, it's sort of quaint talking about breaking the sound barrier. That was a very big deal because it may very well have been a barrier, and people put their lives at risk every single day seeing if this could be done. Now again, people say, so you went a little faster and did it. But back then, this was not for the faint of heart. And, there was a pretty reasonable chance you weren't coming back every time you took one of those experimental planes up. What was your sense of how that world, which was the sort of initial world of test pilots and aviation people, how did that transition into NASA? Did it, there was NACA originally, and it was sort of decided that wasn't going to get us to the moon, end it, start again, and create NASA. Do you think we're at that stage again, where it's time to end NASA and start something new to get a reset? Or is that not necessary or not appropriate?
Well, you and I have done
Chat
that
about
one.
this. Yeah,
You
exactly.
and I have done this one. It depends if Washington can understand its failures and understand how things go and reinvent itself. And so it's the same as any corporation when the information age hits. Are they going to get with it, or are they not going to get with it? And so I don't have the answer for that. Can Washington get with it? Can Washington see its failures? Its failures in vision, its failures in leadership.
Washington's not big on seeing its own failures.
It is not.
It's disturbing to me because I think it is critical that kids have role models, people they can look at, programs that they can look at, other things and say, gee, I want to be like that. I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that. And for years when we were growing up, NASA and the space program was it. And it was interesting because going to the moon was one of those rare moments where a critical set of national defense and security imperatives, meaning if you can send this little satellite around Earth, you can send a nuclear weapon around Earth, so maybe we ought to take this seriously. And then on the flip side, it was, we have a chance to go to the stars and leave. I mean, you could argue that landing on the moon, I've always believed, was to date the most important moment in the evolution of the human species. It's the first time we left here and went somewhere else. And you could have knocked me over with a feather when I was a kid if someone told me, by the way, this is the end of the manned space program, right? Your sense was, what are you, crazy?
Yeah.
It was the beginning, but who knew? And I think that this not having a NASA, I mean, the NASA now may be Silicon Valley and, the Apples, Intels, and other, of the world. It may be other stuff, which is attracting people. But that combination of reaching for the stars plus national security caused the best and brightest people from all over the world to become to be part of it. And it strikes me we're at a moment where we need that again.
We need that project. We need a project like that.
Exactly. And we need to not do things like, let's go to the moon, never mind. Let's go to Mars, someday maybe. I mean, there just seems to be a complete lack of focus and vision in a way that's sensible. Now, it's thrilling, my friend Jeff Bezos, who is, so maybe this was just the moment in time where that's happening. But these people are running businesses. And while on one level they are fulfilling their dreams, childhood dreams of doing stuff like this, at the same time, they're making these into businesses. And the whole point of a NASA is to be able to sponsor, subsidize, and execute things for which there is no business model. It's just stuff we ought to be doing. And that's my concern, is that's where NASA seems to be asleep at the switch, is, articulate what are the visions of the future, the big ideas that are just simply important for humanity, for the evolution of technology, and for the human spirit, and just go do them. Because they're spending the money, right? It's not like NASA has no funding, it's not like this, they're spending the money, but they're not getting traction. And when I say traction, if you ask now, how many astronauts are on the space, stop a person on the street, how many people are on the space station at the moment?
Me.
Exactly. I don't know. I don't know. What are the names of the astronauts? I don't know. What are they doing? Well, exactly. And this is a big problem, because when nobody cares, or such a small number of people care that is that, at the same time, you see every time we do something great, like put a robot on a planet and, crawl around or something, half the world wants to watch and be part of it. Nobody's lost their desire. Nobody's this. And, my concern is just, what does it take to restart that? Or, so is the answer, shut it down and start again? And when I say shut it down, I don't mean shut it down for 10 years. I mean shut it down on Friday, and then Monday, you turn on the new one. And by the way, we're happy to take your application and, so forth. But we need visionary leadership at a time where visionary leadership doesn't seem to exist in government. If you look at our choices for politicians, if you look at our choices for leadership, if you look at, how effective, wrong word, how ineffective Congress is at being able to, whether it's issues like healthcare or global warming or this, that, or that, to be able to pull together to do things that are just plain important. We've got to fix this. I mean, we're, first of all, we both have young kids. You have older ones too. We're not giving them this world in such great shape. We're not giving them the visions that they can be excited about to say, well, why would I want to be part of this and do this? We need to fix this. I mean, what's your sense of all of this? I mean, it's...
Yeah, exactly. But
it's disturbing.
NASA needs the courage to say, we are the visionaries and we're going to come up with a vision. They don't come up with any vision anymore. They simply look at where the money is coming from and listen to them. They salute to the administration and they salute to Congress.
So
and
how
Congress
did we get,
runs the space program.
How did we get there?
It's Washington.
Yep.
I don't have a good answer for how you fix Washington.
Yeah,
but Washington needs the maturity and, to say, leave NASA alone. Let them come up with a vision. Let the visionaries come up with a great vision. Don't micromanage them. Don't control them.
Well,
don't worry about where the money's coming from and where the money goes.
And of course, Congress has interpreted its role in oversight as micromanaging and, controlling and that and all of that. There is obviously, I mean, why do we have the NASA centers that we do, and where are they, and so forth?
They're going to stay there.
Exactly.
They're going to stay there in Space Station 2024, but they may keep it going because the people that are getting all the money out of Space Station are going to feed the money back to Congress and keep it going.
Yep.
So, again, it's Earth orbit, and Space Station, it's what does it give to the public? The public is behind us. The public is incredibly excitable. Just give them something and they get excited. It's not the public.
Yeah, toss them a bone.
Yeah,
Exactly.
toss them a bone. It happens.
So, what makes you happy?
What makes me happy? I don't know if I'm happy, and I don't know if I'm depressed. So I cannot apply the word happy to me. I have a dictionary definition of what it is, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm happy or massively depressed. And I have thought about that. In fact, I wrote it down in my journal today. I just don't know what it means to me.
Does it bother you not to know or not?
No.
Yeah, it just is.
Mm-hmm.
I know that you were studying and interested in beauty as a topic. What's your thinking on that these days?
I love the concept of beauty, and I wish that I had, gone ahead and pursued that in all its ramifications. Unfortunately, it's in the realm of the aesthetics. When you come into the university world, and aesthetics is in the Department of Philosophy, and they are limited to the world of philosophy, and that's a language game. They certainly don't do cognitive psychology, which is essential because beauty is an experience. They don't do cultural anthropology. They don't do sensory physiology, the way beauty enters into your system. They don't do perceptual physiology, consciousness, and all the various other disciplines you need to. So to really understand beauty, you need to be a multiple discipline kind of thinker and to deal with all the different disciplines. Beauty is massively powerful. It really moves you. And so you have the creature, which is taking in an object, but it's the experience that's in between. That's what beauty is. And so, some people say, well, it's only in the beholder. Well, you've ignored the object. And so it is the experience of the object that the creature is taking in. So, but it's a very powerful thing, always has been. Competitive-wise, you're going to win. If you're more beautiful, you will win. But it's also a fun kind of thing.
What's your sense of how much context matters on the topic of beauty? You know, the old beauty's in the eye of the beholder, obviously. Cultural differences,
Sure.
age, you know. Is there beauty that is not dependent upon those factors, that rises above it? Or do you think
Yes.
it's always context-based?
No, there's things that rise above it. But a very good point is that my paradigm for beauty is a range of things. I don't have zero or ones, black or white. I have a range of things. There are some things that are only beautiful to only one individual out of 7 billion. And that is because they associate this thing with great things that happened when this thing was before. So that's an eccentric kind of only for this individual. But now to your question, are there things which appeal to all people? Yes. It's evolutionary things.
Mm-hmm.
The important thing is we did not get dropped here from nowhere. We didn't get dropped here. We evolved here, and we evolved here to appreciate the nature that's around us. And that's an evolutionary strategy. Maybe I'm taking a little step further, but if you find beauty in your environment, you're going to live longer, and you're going to be more successful, and you're going to be more healthy if you find yourself surrounded in beauty. But you were designed to appreciate the beauty of nature around you. So I think there are some universal beauties, of which aurora is one, of which a great sunset. A great sunset or great blue water, who does not think there is beauty in that? So you do have universal beauties which are evolutionary created because you were created to appreciate the environment you came in.
And is your sense that's in our genes, not learned? So that,
Yes.
I mean, let's just say you brought up a child in a box, and then at 17 years old, you took them out and they saw a sunset, they would find that beautiful even though they've never seen it before.
Yes. Now, maybe I'm wrong in regards to a sunset, but I do think they're evolutionary beauties, which evolution created them to appreciate the environment they evolved in.
Yeah. Well, and clearly how we select mates, how we do other things,
Yes.
is based upon what's going to produce the best offspring. And, you know,
Beautiful.
so whether it's opposites attracting, so you
Hey,
get, you know.
a beautiful woman is a beautiful woman
Yep.
to everyone. You just, my God, whoa. You know, yeah.
So how does the concept of beauty and aesthetics affect you and your work? Because traditionally, the fields you've been involved in, first order, not second order, such as Disney and other things like that, but first order, flying, Air Force, you know, systems analysis, engineering, other things like this. Beauty is certainly something one appreciates in design and other areas, but you're not graded on it. You know what I mean? It's the kind of thing where, I mean, I've always been struck by the old saying on aircraft, if it looks good, it flies good. You know, there's a sense of an aesthetic in an airplane.
If it looks well, it swims well.
Yeah, exactly.
Anything.
To what extent have you found your appreciation changing over the years, and that you go out of your way to integrate it into your work or thinking in a way that you wouldn't have, say, 40 or 50 years ago? Do you think you've changed?
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. I've gotten better. Yes, beauty is more important at an older age. It's only because wisdom, it's only because the mindfulness, the nuanced mindfulness of the situation and the phenomenon, I have gotten different with wisdom. And I call it nuanced. I like the word nuanced, connotative, and wisdom, and a different kind of, you know, an intricate mindfulness about things. The mindfulness about the situation and things has gotten much more sophisticated, where beauty could get into the equation.
And is that because you have to sort of hit a certain stride or get a certain degree of competency with self-confidence so that you have the time and ability to think that way, where when you're not at that level of confidence, you don't. I mean, I've always thought about that it's kind of, it's easy in certain disciplines, and engineering is one of them, to worry about the functionality first, and you can be so consumed by that the ability to go back and rethink a solution set or a path from the perspective of aesthetics is often a luxury one doesn't have, right? So, you're on a treadmill, you're running as fast as you can to keep on a project, and it's got to work, and it's got to be safe, and it's got to do all of that. And so, and does it have to be beautiful? Well, one side of the brain says, of course it does, and the other side of the brain says, well, no, it really doesn't. If it's safe and it's functional, it does all of that. As an engineer, that's suboptimal, but for many things, acceptable. And I always find it interesting when you look at certain designed objects. One of the things I collect is vault clocks and timers, the little things that are in the heart of a safe that say when to open it or not. And I've always been fascinated when you look at them, the decoration, the scroll work, the other stuff. Clearly the people doing these, their sense is this is the heart of the safe. And we're spending a lot of time on aesthetics, which are completely superfluous to the function of it, but it clearly mattered to them. And, because this is something you look at, it's pride and joy, and it's so forth. And yet at the other time, there is these sort of much more basic form follows function, thinking, which basically says all of that is superfluous decoration and a waste of time. Just get to the point and make it efficient and do it. I've always found that latter perspective perhaps intellectually interesting if you think about, is there a minimalist design approach where it's just the minimum mechanics or electronics or other things necessary to do the job? And that's appealing on an abstract level.
Simplicity of beauty.
Exactly.
Simple and beauty are.
At the same time, the aesthetics are important because you have to live with it, and you have to live with yourself. And you have to be able to look at it, the idea of creating a joyful object, something that you just like interacting with or holding or looking at or admiring. I mean, it's interesting when you look at antique tools, a screwdriver that's 100 years old or 200 years old and is worth much more now than it was originally, because it's not that it's old, it's that it's beautiful and feels good in the hand, and you appreciate the work that it took to craft it, and someone built it to endure for hundreds of years and still be a joyful object. I think that question about, let's say you've achieved basic functionality, unless you've decided, for instance, your approach is simplicity, and even if you do, then the question is, what is the elegant design or aesthetic that just makes you feel good about it? And that's really important. And it's something that I certainly think I've come to appreciate more as I get older, the importance of that. It's easy to say early on, well, that's kind of a luxury. But it actually isn't a luxury. It's pretty fundamental. What's your sense of, when you're talking to young people who are looking for their path and finding a way, and they ask you, whether it's, how do I do what you do, or how do you do it this or that, what do you tell them?
In regards to beauty?
Yeah.
I think it gets back down to your question, are there universal beauties? The universal beauties are in your genetics, but they come from nature. And so a lot of times if you look at an object and if it's natural to you, it's beautiful. And so the engineering of this object then, it is mimetic or representative of nature. That means it's right and it's true. So I think beauty is not just superfluous. I think one form of beauty is it natural? Does it represent the world out there? And if it represents the world out there, then it is what it is, and it is true, and it is right, and the function's going to be good. I think that's one answer. That's a very difficult question you proposed to me.
Yeah.
But that's one answer I have for it.
I've always found it interesting that when I listen to your perspective on topics which you are fundamentally expert in by any agreeable definition. So you're an expert at spaceflight just because you've done so much of it and so many different things.
It's the beauty. It's
Exactly.
the art. It's the art form.
You're an expert at flying,
Art.
and you're always talking about, flying with your fingertips. And
It's the art.
How do you...
It's the kinesthetics.
Tell me more about that.
Well, it's the art form of how you work with mission control. And so that is key to a very smooth, seamless spaceflight. Is not just flipping the knobs and the computer entries. It's how you work with the people in mission control so they know where you are all the time. And if they know where you are, they can help you. They can head you off if you're going to the wrong direction. They can see your mistakes. And so I look upon that. I look upon that as an art form. And I look upon checklists also as an art form. The administration, I guess that's a hard stretch. But I guess like what you're getting at, I look at everything as an art.
It certainly seems that as being...
But the choreography, and so choreography is a key word. Choreography is me. I choreograph everything. Mm-hmm. And we know what choreography is, I guess it goes back to dance and how you do the dance. Everything I do in life is a choreography, how I make all the pieces play, how I work the mission, the choreography of a complicated mission, all the pieces in the mission control, and how do you make them as music? How do you make them dance together? So thank you. You're just bringing it out of me.
It's a dirty job, but somebody has to do it. So,
but you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly. Well,
so
and that's
I add music to everything I want to do.
Yeah, well, and tell us the story, which I always found fascinating, when you were doing the Hubble repair. I remember you describing the mission rehearsal. What struck me as being an interesting aesthetic challenge, as well as just a functional one, is how do you put together the different ways you have to train, whether it's thermovac versus an air-bearing table versus that, and then how with the best laid plans, what you had to do. Could you tell that story? Because I've always thought that's exactly to the point of what we're talking about.
NASA does not have a simulator for spacewalking. So they have the water tank, and the principle for the water tank is Newton's laws, is whatever force you put in, it's coming back on you. So you have to be able to deal with the forces coming back on you. If it's 30 pounds there, you going 30 pounds there. So you need to manage your body so whatever torque you put on the object, you manage it back here. That's a principal reason for water. And von Braun came up with the water, and he built him a 40-foot deep facility against the rules, without money, and GAO, got on his butt for a big reprimand for stealing money from other things, but we all cheered him on. But so he had that kind of vision. We don't have a simulator. Now, for shuttle landing and control from 35,000 feet down, we have the shuttle training airplane that flies like a shuttle going to fly. You do things out here where shuttle controls the place, talks to the computers, and the airplane is going to fly the way a shuttle is going to fly. That's a perfect simulation. So if you have perfect simulation, you jump in there and you stupidly say, this is the way the real world's going to be, and you go do the other world, and it's the way it turns out. It's why in citation training, 100% of your training is in simulator. The first time you see the airplanes, you check run. We don't have that for spacewalking. So you have to take a lot of analog devices, such as the water tank, such as the air-bearing floor that move around. Only in your imagination does the final walk exist. So you build your imagination based on the experience of all these analog devices. At the same time you're doing the analog devices, you are very careful to say this is real and this is not real. And so you take the real parts of the analog devices, you stuff them into here, and then you sit in your imagination and hope that you build a spacewalk in your imagination. And what you're building, of course, is the Dorothy Hamill dance, figure skating, and I trained with her. I spoke with her at the Achievement Academy that we know about, and I got started with her there. But I brought athleticism to the spacewalking world. They had thought it was engineering, you know, that's what you do. That's a legendary approach, it's engineering kind of stuff. I brought the athleticism, the perfection of thousands of years of athletes. They know what they're doing. It's the high jump, it's every inch, it's every toe. It's perfect, you know, repetition of perfection once you've converged on that final solution. So I brought athleticism, the dance, I do spacewalking, and I got a job I got to do. It is only my body. It's the dance of my suited body and the tools. It is that dance that I envisioned that's going to get the job done. And it's going to get the job done as perfectly as possible because you've imagined everything. And so only in your head then does that dance exist through experience of all these different analog devices that you've brought to play. And so that's what a spacewalk is. It's the choreography of a great dance. And you hope when you get out there, and one of the first things you do when you get out there is just, did I get it right?
Yeah.
Did I get it right?
Surprise.
Yes. And if you look up, oh my God, I didn't get that right in my imagination, then the rest of it may not go so
So when
well.
have you been surprised and why?
Huh?
When have you been surprised that it didn't happen the way
In
you had
life?
rehearsed? Yeah.
In life, in general?
Yeah, or spacewalking, or, you know, because this notion that
Well,
you've rehearsed the mission in your head,
Spacewalking, yeah.
and now you go live, and is it tracking the way you thought it was?
I had some surprises which I should not have had. It's like closing those doors that I closed. In my development in designing Hubble over the 18 years, I designed the telescope itself and the tools and procedures. I had to negotiate with the telescope at times because I can't get to a component that they've asked me to replace. I can't get there. I can't reach and I can't see. And so I have to negotiate them to give me access. And so I designed the telescope. I never got to close these particular doors. It's a gap. I never got to close those particular doors, and it turns out to close those doors in the real world, they had to align them and then close them. Well, I got up there and I went to close them, they're not aligned. So this latch down there and that latch up there. But I had two come-alongs. I had two come-alongs from the farm. I put in a spaceship to close Space Shuttle doors. But you check with a flight director, and okay, where we go. So, but it's amazing that in 40 hours of spacewalking, we only had 2 or 3 tiny surprises.
Not
so
bad.
that means we nailed it. We nailed the details. We nailed the details.
And how much rehearsal and preparation did that take?
The rehearsal and preparation, it starts on a farm.
Right,
So,
exactly.
The 18 years I was working on it, there were times, so I'm like Dorothy Hamill, who she knows when the Olympics are, she knows when the music's going to start. She knows what she's good at and what she's not good at. She knows the techniques. She plays and plays and plays, converging on that final 4 or 5 minutes. And finally, when she thinks I'm there, then you repetitively practice that, so when the music starts, you pull it off. There were times, in terms of my choreography of body and tools, that the only time I had converged on the final solution, I had one run to check that out. And so, unfortunately, I guess I was slow in converging to the final solution, because I only had one practice run at the end to really get it down. Of course, I was close. The convergent was close, but that's what it's about.
So tell the story about when you were putting I don't remember the correct technical name, but the corrective optics module in, and the visibility issue you had.
That was, the visibility issue was the rate gyros, the rate gyro package. So over that 18 years, since I had no access to the rate gyros, I had to remove these components and tie them off to the side so that I could get access to the
Yeah,
rate
bad
gyros.
if you forget and it drifts off into space, isn't
Well,
it?
yeah, well, that's called, they'll come get it though. So that's called a tool chase. You yell tool chase. And that's a worthwhile story, tool chase. That played into the way I salvaged STS-49 when they couldn't capture this satellite. I had them go out there and do it by hand. But tool chases, the two pilots back, and they're bored silly because you're getting all the fun. When you yell tool chase, that means you've lost something. They say, man, we're in a game. And the tool chases, so you see the tool floating off, and then the tool stops, and it starts coming back to you. But your perspective is that you are the reference point. So you think the tool is flying itself,
Yeah,
and it's
exactly.
not. those nice guys back there, those professionals, they're bringing you and the shuttle to the tool. But your reference point is, my God, the tool's flying itself. It's
Isn't
coming
that
back to me.
convenient? Exactly.
Now, I have seen a person, I've not done tool chases, thank goodness. But I've seen a person hold their hand out and look over their shoulder to people, said, here, how good do you think you all are? And they put the tool in their hand.
Nice.
And we're doing 25,500 feet per second, the two of you, and they put the tool in the hand with a 240,000 pound object. That's how good they are.
Not bad.
And so, so that is called a tool chase. So that is how good they are there. But where was the point? Where
Back to the rate gyros and the visibility
Yes.
issue.
So, like you said, yeah, if you lose, I got to store those things. Okay, now I got to the rate gyros. I saved an hour by, instead of removing all these things, Jeff Hoffman would grab my boots and he would shove me inside the optical path. So I would get in the position of work. I cannot get my arms up if he puts me in like this. I haven't got the room. So I need to get up in here. And then he grabs my leg, he grabs my boots, and he feeds me up in there. And once I'm there, he puts my boots in restraints. So now I go to work on these rate gyros. So I'm looking up there, and to align the gyros, you got these two pins, and you got the two holes in the gyro package. And these are conical shaped. They're sharp at the end. And you put the pins on, and then you put the bolts on, which drives them into that cone, and that's your alignment. Mm-hmm. So I worked out these procedures, and that saved me a whole hour instead of
Which is
taking
a
all
big
the
deal.
components off. An hour was important. So
I mean,
people were
also,
very
the-
skeptical.
The work is exhausting, isn't it? I mean,
No, sir.
It's not.
No. I'll let it be exhausting. So
Because
if I ever take,
I've heard from others that they have found it really fatiguing and a real workout. Is it because they're fighting it rather than
not if
going
it's
with
my
the flow?
procedure, because I don't accept that. If I take one deep breath, I say, it's not right. And so, STS-6, I did the first shuttle spacewalk, my heart rate peaked at 60. That's not exhausting. And it was averaging 45. So that's the way I designed a spacewalk. You reserve this for the contingency that you didn't plan on. You reserve the muscle and the exhausting for things you didn't plan on. The routine spacewalk has got to go smooth. It's got to go normal breathing, normal heart rate. Otherwise, redesign it. Redesign the tool, redesign what you got to do. So it's got to flow. It has to flow. And that's the kind of spacewalks I designed. For the whole Hubble mission, 40 hours, it went like that. There's no out of breath, there's no gasping, there's no anything. And the crews after mine, they took my procedures too, and my tools, and they had the same experience. And so it should be that easy. If it's not that easy, redesign it. Redesign it for zero G, redesign it for work in this particular suit, which is bulky, not got your same body, but redesign it. If it's not going easy, then you don't have it right.
So what about?
So I was a wimp.
What about claustrophobia? I mean, on one level, you're in the smallest room possible, right? I mean, a spacesuit designed for you is about the smallest space you can be in.
Yeah.
And then your colleague is shoving you up into a hole, and it seems like this
Well,
is
it felt kind of nice.
yeah, right, womb-like. Yeah.
I have been there many times before. A claustrophobic episode, we all spacewalkers fear that, because when it hits you, you want to rip the helmet off, even if it's in a vacuum.
Yeah, which doesn't seem like a good thing to do.
No, so that is something you really fear, and I got into those moments. Having designed a space suit, I had to press the suit to metabolic levels beyond which it could handle. And so you want to know how the backpack breaks down. So the backpack is controlling your temperature, and also your backpack provides the O2 you need to breathe. It removes the CO2. So your backpack is your physiology, your closed loop system. Well, when you do so much hard metabolic work, you break the system down. It cannot support you anymore. And this really feels bad. It's like trying to run a mile with a bag over your head, and it gets massively uncomfortable. And so when things get that miserable, you worry about the level, the claustrophobic level. And you just hope you don't tip over. But that's something you worry about.
But you sense it and kind of...
You know where you are, but when it happens, you can't do anything. It's terrible. So you're asymptotic to reaching that point. And I've been very close. Maybe I've been over.
Right.
It was very, very bad.
Well, but experimental evidence suggests you didn't rip your helmet off. So...
Well, I'm too tired to get it off.
Yeah, right.
I'm too distressed to get it off. But that is, and that's part of space flight. It's part of your escape suit. It's part of the cabin. So claustrophobia is always something you think about, and you can't train it out. Well, I guess maybe experience helps.
I tend not to be particularly claustrophobic, I guess. But, I've found once or twice in my life, I'm in an airplane in a uncomfortable tight seat or something like that. And you feel it kind of welling up inside you.
Exactly.
And then what you do is say, calm down, relax, there's nowhere to go, there's this other thing. And, and I've been able, the couple of times that it's happened, to just sort of dial it down.
It's happened to me in a commercial airplane too.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? You feel it kind of welling up inside you,
do.
and you're sort of saying, what is this about, or why am I feeling this? And then
Do I need to get up and take a walk in an hour or something?
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. Okay, so you were putting the rate gyros in.
I got 2 holes in the rate gyro, and I hold them like this. I mean, I still remember exactly. So it gets down to how you know what I mean? It's this level of detail, even today. Here's the handle, but I got to backhand it on. So I'm backhanding these 2 holes under these 2 prongs, and I could barely. So I went through that in the water tank, and the engineers, and I always involved the engineers and had them doing, after 18 years of building procedures, when I sent that to the board, I never had any objections because I involved the stakeholders and the engineers all along. And so the smart people, they knew what we were doing. That was a critical part of the process. But this procedure, so I had them with all the open doors. They were watching me in the water tank and other things and see that I'm not rubbing. If I rub anywhere, it's dust on the mirrors.
Yep, which is not good.
We're in the optical path. We know we could have really hurt the thing. We're in the optical path. If I'm rubbing anything while Jeff has stuffed me up in there and I'm working, but they bought off on it all because I never rubbed anything. So I got up there in space and I couldn't see the holes and I couldn't see the prongs. So I got to put the holes. I got to put these things in the holes. Today, even to this day, I don't have the answer. Don't have the answer. The mock-ups may have been different. There may have been different sizing. I was always worried about the different sizing and the mock-ups getting to me. Low fidelity of the mock-ups. I was worried about the helmet visor.
Yeah, is the rehearsal helmet.
Your water tank visor, everything is, they try to make it as good as they can, but somebody missed. And so I cannot see. Now, it's not dangerous because Jeff Hoffman is going to pass me this massive extension wrench that I came up with, of course, and I'll put the wrench on the things. The boat will not catch the threads if I'm not in the holes, so there's no danger. It's just nothing will happen. I still got to find the holes and get the thing. And so, but I'm working on sound, and so the sound in the vacuum is a funny thing. Are we taking too much time?
No.
And so SDS-6, first shuttle spacewalk, I'm out there and I'm hearing the rockets go off, and I say, Story, you know, you're not hearing things. Vacuum, you know, you shouldn't be hearing anything. Why are you hearing things? Well, just, you know, you're not hearing things. Just tell yourself you're not hearing things. Doggone it, I still heard a rocket and I saw the flare. Okay, you're hearing things, I gotta get an answer. My waist ring is touching the shuttle.
So it's conduction through.
As we all know, sound propagates through the carpet and through wood. It propagates through everything in its own way. But my waist ring, metal, is touching the metal of the shuttle. And that's the way the vibration of the shuttle structure got into my suit. And that's where I heard the rocket. So then, from that, I got this funny idea. If you have someone out there you're spacewalking with and you lose radio contact, if I'll push the two visors, my visor together with theirs, I can talk to them. I thought this was brilliant. And then I tried that out the next time I got to spacewalk, and sure enough, you push the visors together, you can talk to the other person. Now, I thought I was really being smart, and I presented that at some meeting. And it's a very kind gentleman, a very sweet person, but he wanted to get me straight. He said, Story, it's a science fiction book that's 100 years old, and they did it back then. Okay.
Thanks.
All right, but I love that. And so if you look at science fiction, there's an awful lot of answers back there that we assumed, you know, like eating in space. They knew you could eat if it's wet back then, but we had toothpaste tubes. And so, but anyway, I got the sound, so I put my visor against the sound, and I'm now listening for the sound of this. There's a difference between if the spikes are hitting the flat surface and going in the hole. So today I don't have this answer, but of course I told the subsequent crews about it, and they still accepted my procedures, but at least they were forewarned them.
Interesting.
So we only had about two or three little surprises of 40 hours of spacewalking, because we used our imagination.
So arguably the Hubble is certainly on the short list, if not the most important scientific instrument that's ever been put to use. How much more life does it have? What's your sense?
How much life? It could be gone now. It could be dead now.
Yeah.
It could be dead when next time we go to the radio.
So we're right on the edge.
Or we get another 10 years. So it's the bell-shaped curve, but we don't know what part of it's going to fail. It's 26 years now, and it had a 15-year lifetime. It got off to a very bad start because of design and quality. When things fail early, it's not because they wore out. We had design and quality problems early on, which we fixed. And so now, I don't know. It can be tonight we lose it, or 10 years from now. It's just a matter of statistics. The important thing about Hubble is that in clear air. It's a very primitive instrument. The CCDs are 30 years old. It's a very tiny instrument. It's a very tiny thing. It's 84 inches. Compare that with the Kex or the large telescopes in the Atacama. I mean, it's a very tiny little thing. It's out there with totally pure viewing.
Getting rid of that atmosphere does help, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a great reason for being in space. And hopefully the Webb will push us.
Are you excited about the Webb?
Yeah, it's infrared, and it's in a perfect place to do viewing. It's a massively, through interferometry, they're hooking all those mirrors together.
Boy, sure not a good place to do a service call, though, is it?
Unless you're going to do it robotically. And so it could be done robotically, too, if designed to be done robotically. When we designed Hubble, it was a human. It's very difficult to, when you've designed something for human repair, to do it robotically, because humans are really pretty ingenious. And the hand and the eye, you know, and the head, it's hard to replace that with robotically if you designed it for that kind of fix.
So what's the sensation of being in orbit around the Earth? And, you know, it strikes me that because it's such a different experience than most people have or will ever get, or the notion of you're there, it's quiet, it's tranquil, if you look in the wrong direction, you get blinded, or you're being fried on one side and you're being frozen out on the other. I mean, it's a pretty hostile environment. Does it feel that way, or are you not aware of that, or what's it like?
Well, I don't look upon it as hostile. I look upon it, I wasn't evolved to be there, but it's a very nice place. So that's why I look at every new culture I go into. I'm the guest.
Have you seen or experienced things on orbit that surprised you that you didn't expect?
Oh, there's all kinds of stuff going on, all kinds of unexplained things. My space worms, I never to this day have an answer.
Tell me about that.
I think, well, of course, the UFO people were massively excited about that, but so a lot of stuff happens, like on Challenger's first flight I was on, when in the manufacture of Challenger, when you lose a tool, when it goes behind, it's gone. You can't rip the shuttle apart to go get that tool. It's gone. Mm-hmm. So you just leave it there. So in the manufacture, a lot of bolts, nuts, and tools go where they're not supposed to go. So you launch with them there. But the vibrations
it
of
finds
the launch
a new home.
Kick them loose.
Yep.
And then all of a sudden you're, the engines go down to 65, but when they shut down, it's rather sudden. So you kick all this debris loose. Now it's like a little experiment I did. When you have a gallon milk jug with a little orifice like that, if you put a screw in there, it's out of there in no time. Because the screw is bouncing, it keeps bouncing throughout your gallon milk jug, and finally it hits the hole and out it comes.
That's interesting.
When you're lazy, and you try to put something down somewhere and say it'll be there when I get back, it's not there. So you learn not to be lazy. You got to tie it down because it won't be there, because that's what happens. But when I open the doors on Challenger's first flight, it's Home Depot. It's Home Depot coming
all over
out.
the place.
And I'm not talking just screws. I'm talking about tools. So it's, my goodness, man, it's Home Depot coming, coming out the door. And now, so that all does its own thing, but the physics is interesting, because if it's got a certain trajectory, it's going to stay. If nothing touches it, it's going to stay in that way. And if it's got a certain rotation, it's going to keep that forever. And so the physics applies. Now you get in the sunlight, and when it rotates, it starts to twinkle. Now, when this Home Depot stuff, when it gets about 100 feet away, it is fascinating. And you get a big washer, you know what that looks like. Well, all that debris out there, 100 feet away, and you don't know if it's a mile away. So if it's only 100 feet, but if you assume it's a mile away, that is spectacular.
Exactly, that is one big
thing. That's a visitor. That's a whole squadron of visitors if you don't know the history. But I record that stuff, and I take very serious my ability to see things and my ability to understand what they are, and I take very serious, if I have a visitor, what it's going to look like and what it's going to do. And so I take that incredibly serious, just because I'm a mindful observer, and yep. I'm privileged to be there, because there's a million other people could have been there, but I'm privileged to be there, so I'm going to take that incredibly serious. So twice I recorded my snake, and snake means it's about, I don't know what size. Because if you don't know how far away it is,
it's either 10 inches or 100 feet. Yeah,
I'd guess 6 or 8 feet, but it's got internal motion for a while. It's got internal motion like a garden hose you curled up and threw out there. It's got internal motion until it damps out. Mm-hmm. So twice I recorded that. People got really excited. Well, no, it's some seal. But I asked Kennedy Space Center, are we missing something? Is this important? No one could ever find out. To this day, I don't know what it was. Okay. So I recorded it. But there's a lot of things you don't understand. But I've had a huge amount of experience with approaching another object, a huge amount of experience of deploying satellites or flying in parallel. On my last mission, I flew in parallel with 2 satellites, the only mission to have 2 satellites you're flying with for days on end, one of them for 16 days.
Right.
So you get to understand, what things look like out there. And my approaches to other satellites, my deployment of other satellites, I take very serious my observation of what that looks like as we depart. Like the orbital mechanics is massively important. If you say something's 200 miles below you, well, if it's stationary, what? It can't be stationary. Not unless they got a continuous rocket burn.
Yep. Yeah.
It's going to go ahead of you if it's below you.
So we're constantly, there are people, the UFO question, that every 5 minutes are being abducted in some little road in Utah or this sort of thing. We've sort of oscillated between contemporary theory says we're alone in the universe versus there are a million stars that can have
Billions. Trillions. It's
Exactly.
called 10 to the 29th.
And then there's but what are the odds of them coming here, which is kind of an ordinary little corner of nowhere in particular. Where do you come down on all of that? And have you ever seen anything, or any of experienced something? I mean, I'm always struck by, I'm of it is really unlikely that in this place in Kansas, at that gas station, the UFO keeps coming and abducting people. Are there unidentified objects? Well, obviously there are things that are unidentified all the time. But it is kind of interesting to think, well, what is the likelihood in our lifetimes, or something like this, that we will see or experience something of extraterrestrial origin? What's your sense of that?
Well, of course, you have the CETA and the other kinds of electromagnetic, whatever telescopes that are looking for the message that has intelligence to it. First of all, I think there's billions upon billions of civilizations. Life is so powerful. We've identified almost 4 million species on this earth, and people consider we got another half to go. So maybe there's 7 million species on just our earth. So life is powerful. Carbon to carbon, that bond, and what we know about life.
Seems to work.
It's very, very powerful. And so life will arise when it can. And with Kepler and other things, Kepler got 100 and some planets last week, for golly's sake. And so we're talking about billions upon billions. Now, if a planet got its stuff together, and if it develops its technology over millions of years, so we've been maybe on this planet working on technology for 300 or 400 years, when an industrial revolution, 300 or 400 years. If we got our act together so we're sustainable, and we develop technology for 1 billion years, we'd be very, very advanced. I think there's billions of civilizations doing star travel out there as well. So, but for me here, nothing has passed my evidence-based, my particular filter.
Yep.
And I've spoken, of course, at the coffee pot with all the astronauts and all kinds of other people, and I take the question very serious, very serious. And so it just hasn't passed my filter. Now, if someone says they've been abducted, I don't argue with them. I just say I wasn't there. I can't tell you. But the evidence they bring back is
not compelling.
Doesn't tell me anything, but they can also say I was brainwashed so I wouldn't have the evidence.
But it is interesting because I am not a believer that these things that you hear about, do they believe it? They may very well believe it, but people believe a lot of things. But it is interesting when you look at rare phenomenology, such as ball lightning, which has been observed for a long, long time.
Hey, I've had it. I've had it inside the cockpit.
Right, and
it's not nice.
But as you know, has been discounted for years. And finally people around us, because first of all, we don't have a good explanation for how a plasma can do that.
I've been burnt by it.
Right, exactly.
It's not nice.
Right, so clearly you're a believer. But it's interesting when you take something like that, which is so widely reported by credible witnesses, pilots, other stuff like that, and yet the scientific community, especially plasma physicists, because they actually haven't had a reasonable explanation for how it can be, how can it sustain, how can that. One, it's quite interesting because the idea that there is a different way of having a stable plasma or something like that in space, well, interesting. We obviously have things to learn. But it's also interesting at how quick the communities are to dismiss this stuff as being nonsense, or the observer clearly didn't see what they saw or experienced. irrespective of hundreds of reports over the year. And I read something on it recently where, there's pretty good foundation now of, yeah, it's happening, and here's under the circumstances, and you can make some in a microwave oven, and you can do other things. But it does bring to bear that when you have something like that, which is a non-reproducible in a way anyone has figured out how to do, but periodically occurring phenomenology, it takes a long time to get the scientific community to come around. And clearly there is a predisposition when it comes to classic UFOs of fundamental non-believers who will interpret everything in a way of sort of discrediting it. And 99.9% of it is very easy to discredit. I mean, I can't tell you the number of things that I look at and someone says, how do you not know that's a lens flare? Or how do you not know that this is a reflection? Or how, because you look at it, and if you've been a photographer, it's instantly obvious what it is. But at the same time, it's interesting to me when you look at the number of astronauts or the number of people who have tied into, for lack of a better word, religious conversion or a sense of spirituality or things that are triggered, very complex set of emotions. What's been your experience with that and spirituality, or the sense of a God, or the sense of some greater? Do you get any of that? Because I got to tell you, I am probably unduly dismissive when I hear those sorts of things, in a way of saying, give it a rest and so forth. But I'm not sure that that's a rational or sensible reaction to it. What's your sense of that?
I think that's probably the right reaction. So, of course, having been there for 30 years, I got to know a lot of astronauts in a rather intimate way. I think there's only 2 or 3 that had an epiphanal kind of thing like that, but they had that before they went. And so spaceflight was not an epiphany. It set them off on a different track.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it's only 2 or 3, and they were toward that trajectory before they went.
So this may have validated it or amplified it.
So it really hasn't happened. I've flown with 27 different people. I'm a people watcher. I'm a people watcher so that I can catch space. What is space and how are they doing? I've flown with 17 people who were rookies to see them at the very first moments, to see how all that goes, and also see, and I've debriefed, of course, about 150 missions where people came back home. And so that's a huge database I have in addition to my own experience. Yeah, my own self, at age of 3 in the forest, alone at the middle of the night, was much more epiphanal in spaceflight. I had to have a deeper faith that this place was okay, and the place was reasonable. A 3-year-old in the forest, and so that was my being out there. That was further out than spaceflight, and going down the rivers at the age of 5. So whatever I was to get, I got it then.
Mm-hmm.
But I do send out a prayer for them to come and get me. So I am an evidence-based person, but I send a prayer out, and people say, they think it's a nutcase. He's praying to them to come get me, and I say, "Do you pray, sir?" "Well, of course I do." "Well, who do you pray to, and for what?" "You pray, and so do I. So leave me alone."
Exactly.
But the prayer just means that there's 1 in a trillion chances, but I am out there. And so maybe whoever listens, maybe they listen more to the thing that's out here. And I don't know what they can hear. The way technology and the way the world goes, eventually you'll be able to listen to that kind of thing. You put in our brain waves, and these people are so advanced. But also it's fun. But I want to acknowledge, first of all, that I know you're there. If you reject them, they won't come. So if you reject any possibility of a visit before it happens, they're not going to come. And they won't come in the current era anyway, because the advanced evolutionary string, which I will not call intelligent, the advanced evolutionary string called human can't get along with itself. It hates itself. So we got 70 or 80 wars today.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it?
And so, yeah, it's terrible. We got to get over that. It's terrible. But if you are an advanced creature,
you'd be looking at that. Who wants to get?
You know, it'll be the day the world stood still.
Well, and that's what is to me always this question about, is there other life? Where is it, and all of that, and and why do I not believe they're visiting us and doing all of that? First of all, I don't believe we're that interesting. Second of all, from a purely practical point of view, if you look at how quickly, quote unquote, our kind of intelligent life evolved, where you spend millions of years doing nothing and then, it's like that, and we're right there.
Maybe that's the way it happens everywhere.
Exactly. But the idea that they happen to be at that same moment on that steep curve that we are, that seems really unlikely. So they arriving and viewing us, the likelihood is either we appear to them like lichen or moss.
Of course. Or worse.
Exactly, that we're so, so they're looking at Earth as a petri dish with this kind of primitive set of decorative things, messing around there. Or, again, where they are relative to we are is so desynchronized that not only the notion to have a conversation, but the interest or likelihood to want to have a conversation. I mean, how many times do you walk out into the woods and start talking to...
We could not accept the fact we are lichen.
Exactly.
Because we're the rulers of the universe.
Well, let's put it this way. The lichen probably feels the same way. What do you mean I'm lichen? And so those are the things where you just sort of look at it and say, yeah, they're doing this. And by the way, the little green or white or other people arrive, and do they arrive in Times Square where there are interesting lights and unusual things? No, they end up in a road in, rural Ohio next to a farm. Yeah, that's where, if I were looking at the Earth, that's where I would decide to start exploring and sampling. So, to me, so much of it just seems kind of silly. And I would love to be demonstrated as being wrong. It would be amusing if it turns out, no, actually, life evolves this far and then it just stays this way for 100 million years. And okay, well, I guess we'll find out. But it to me, when you have these big questions, is why it's important to have a SETI project, to just show how easy or hard it is. If you never listen, well, you're obviously never going to hear anything. And if you do that, and so even though the odds may be incredibly small, how the hell do you know? I mean, I find that, what of the latest one, the extreme dark field, what do they call the one where they look at where you see nothing and just take an exposure for along the something rather deep field, ultra deep field, I forget what it is.
And they find another 1,000 galaxies.
Exactly. And so, I mean, that's what's fascinating, is try to find a dark point in space where there doesn't seem to be anything and stare at it, and you realize all hell's breaking loose. And so, that thinking about and finding our place and how do we fit in all of that, it's just important stuff, is to ask the right questions, which requires thoughtfulness, and then be able to pursue it in such a way that you have a foundation of thinking that can be built upon, so that these fundamental questions of who are we, where are we, why are we here, why is anyone else there? I mean, these things matter. And I think that it's so easy to be dismissive.
But that's what people like. They like the Hubble.
Exactly.
Because it's not powerful enough to bridge, philosophy and theology, or science and philosophy, but the potential is there. But it's not the science they're after. It's the meaning of the hope of down here. They're looking for the answer out there.
So what do you think the odds are that within some reasonable period of time, let's make that 20 to 30 years, that we'll be landing on another planet?
20 to 30 years?
Yeah, are we going to Mars? Is that going to happen?
In the 2017 congressional budget, there's not $1 for Mars.
Oh, that.
Or 2016.
So do you think Elon or Jeff are going to do it?
They got $200 billion?
I guess it depends how well the cars sell.
No, no, we're not going there yet. So as you well know, everything in life starts with a vision. It starts with leadership. It starts with a great project management to make it happen right, on cost, on schedule. It's vision, it's leadership, it's project management. Today we have none of those.
And it is a schedule. It's saying, okay, we're going here now.
It is a schedule.
Yeah.
It is when and where. And so, okay, we're going to the moon, we're going to do it in 8 years. It's Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, halfway into our first space station. We did it all in 8 years, we did it right. Because we had vision, leadership, project management. So again, it gets back to our old question that we couldn't answer. It's how do you make vision happen?
I think that, the interesting question is, when it comes to the Mars topic, because we've done a bad job of educating people, the sense is, well, we went to the moon, perhaps forgot how to go to the moon again, but it's harder, but going to Mars is not that much harder than going to the moon. And the fact is, it's a lot harder than going to the moon. And in fact, in some ways, it's almost, hard to imagine how hard it is, especially if we're talking about people and getting there in a reasonable period of time and getting back. And what about the radiation? And what about this? And what about that? That's what NASA and America always used to be great at, is taking on those particularly hard problems and such, being thoughtful about it, developing a plan, and so forth. You wonder what happened to that spirit relative to this, because so much of this is, if you have a really hard engineering challenge, you actually need some good ideas, and you have to run them to ground and understand how hard it is to do and how you're going to do it, rather than just shrug your shoulders and say, oh, well, we'll get to that at some point, or do that. And what seems to be lacking is the passion coupled with the wherewithal to do that kind of thinking and that kind of execution these days. That seems to be what we have to fix. Mm-hmm. We need to get passion back into the space program, and we have to get serious so that it's not just each program is a placeholder, or it's a white-collar welfare program.
Yeah, that's all it is.
Exactly.
It's called X30, X32, X33, X34, X37. What do you need? And we spend a couple of billion in each, sweep under the carpet and say we learned something.
Yeah, which of course is nonsense. We learned something, but nothing relevant. What's your sense of the role in astronautics? Is that something NASA should still be involved in, or should that just be to commercial? Does NASA?
The aeronautics?
Yeah, the aeronautics. I'm sorry.
Sure.
So do you
think they
think
can do some great stuff there too?
Mm-hmm. Like what? What do you think's a good, fruitful direction for that isn't going to happen by normal commercial investment?
Maybe a brand new airplane.
Yeah. Supersonic? Do you think SST again? Is that a good idea, a bad idea?
A lot of drag, a lot of fuel.
Yeah.
So, that's all I can say about supersonic. A lot of drag, a lot of fuel. But I think there's major breakthroughs to be done even in the structure. Airplane, birds got a wing, birds got a tail. Airplanes got a wing, airplanes got a tail. There may be some huge structural things. Skin friction is something else. And so, but they're incredibly good. I love commercial air. In Southwest, 45 years, never hurt anyone in 45 years.
It's pretty amazing.
Delta's got 15 million flights without an incident. These folks are running on 10 decimal places of reliability.
Yeah, it's pretty
And
astonishing.
so I teach them the R word, reliability. It's right there in front of your face. Dig in and dissect what they do to achieve reliability, and you can have the same results.
So I know you're a big fan of the FAA.
I am.
Tell me about that.
I'm a massive fan of commercial aviation. And even though across the world it's done incredibly well, I think we're a little better in the U.S. because of the military penetration of commercial air, that link between military and the commercial air. We've produced those kind of 10 decimal place numbers of reliability and safety. And so it's a human system from where you start with, like a Boeing 797. Oh, we don't have one of those. When those vibes are in the air, from that point all the way down, there's massive human involvement in that process of design, engineering, project management, test, all the way through, massive human involvement, and they come up with 10 decimal places. That's what I have massive respect and admiration for, how they pull that off in a very hazardous environment. You say hazardous? Yes, if you fall from 7 miles, it's going to hurt.
Yeah, exactly.
If you're going 600 miles an hour, you run into something, it's going to hurt. You're flying along with 50,000 pounds of fuel. If that gets away, it's going to hurt. They have nailed that. And it's continuous improvement every single day. Anytime anything happens outside that plan, it gets incorporated from there on. And so FAA is part of that process. NTSB is a huge part of that process. So I teach NTSB as people that are the most nuanced in terms of causality and consequences of any organization I know. You read NTSB reports and you get incredibly good with herding the cats. It's stupid old me again. What are factors are going to influence my trying to get to the finish line? NTSB are the smartest people on earth about doing that. But I don't teach how to be an accident investigator. I teach a futuristic looking forensics to see what they see in the past, but to see it in the future and to head it off before it happens. So that's what I admire about that, the whole thing, including FAA is also a major part of that, the whole thing that results in 10 decimal places.
Yeah, because it's interesting that, you know, it's a big government agency, but it seems to do a consistently great job. And it's not like there aren't many government organizations that you look at and you say, gee, they really do that great. But they consistently seem to have been one of them.
They do. But it's like my relationship to controllers, you know, as an experienced aviator, my relationship to the controllers, that's an art form. It's how you talk to them, how you establish that relationship, you know, and that's part of the business.
And I know you've talked, well, we've talked many times about flight controllers at LAX or things like that, of just how good these guys and gals are.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
They understand you. They know you're a single pilot in an airplane that doesn't have autopilot and is very fast. They know how to talk to you, and they know what you're up to. And so I'm working these suits all day long down in Delaware, working suits. I'm tired, I'm fatigued beyond everything, and I got to fly my T-38 into Hartford to work on the backpack at Hamilton Sunstrand there. And so, man, I'm on a low altitude. I'm in a high performance, fast jet. The charts are getting ahead of me. And I just said, New York City, NASA, so-and-so, go ahead, sir. I'm having a bad night, and the charts are starting to get ahead of me. Most professional call I ever made. He said, oh, heading in altitude to Hartford. Okay, they took care of me. So, but it's the way they manage people. It's the way they know your particular circumstances, whether you're solo or with 3 pilots, the kind of airplane, the kind of autopilots. And it's an art form, again, back to the choreography.
Yeah, and it is choreography. I mean, that seems to be the recurring theme where, and there are, where 2 professionals come together who've never met before, but there is this rhythm and there is this resonance to couple to accomplish a task.
But when you're flying down to minimums, that's bad fog, and this is a radar-controlled approach. There's no other instrument. It's not the ILS. There's no electronics. He's simply looking at your radar, and he's talking at you about your high or low, left or right, and what to do. Well, you calibrate each other, and so he gets to learn your response. When he asks for this, you give him so much response. And when he tells you this, then you respond accordingly, but you have to match up. Turn left. Well, okay, how fast I turn left? Well, you get used to each other. But when he's bringing you down to minimums in the fog, I mean, golly, you get on the ground and, you just love this guy.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I had the experience 30 years ago. I was in, a little plane. It was a charter, single engine, single pilot. We're ILS, and, can't find the ground, is a little bit of a problem when you can't understand where you are. And then, through a series of things, navigation problem on the airplane, hardware problem, was it the ILS system, the airport? Who knows? But all of a sudden it goes away. And so, we're sort of sitting there, well, let's see if we can find ground. Let's see if we have some idea of where we are. And, this idea that you're not going to find a good way to get down is pretty intimidating. It sort of clarifies your focus, and you realize you've gone from what was quite a routine flight to something not at all routine. And, good news is we're sort of flying along and opened up, and you could see lights down below you and get oriented and do the whole thing. But, and these were in the days before GPS and before a bunch of other stuff. It was a clarifying moment. And it was when I listened to my pilot talking to the tower and talking to other stuff, we were going to a uncontrolled little airport, no one to talk to, but, he was talking to one of the big centers, and, they were very helpful. And it was interesting because knowing they're there was very comforting. The idea that there's someone listening to you and understands there's a problem. Yeah. And, you hear, when you're the passenger and not quite expecting this, things like, do you want to declare an emergency? I will remember those words, And, the pilots, well, not yet, sir, but,
close.
If we don't find, some ground sometime soon, we may have that. So I don't know, that gave me a lot of admiration for the process. And you could see that connection, that radio connection back and other things mattered a lot. It provided a sort of sense of, they got your back.
They look after you. Yeah.
So, as sort of final thoughts, what's your sense of, as parents? I've always sort of looked at my job with Kira is to show her as much of the world, to kind of let her find her passions. What do you think our job is to be the best dad, and what we do with our daughters and our sons and all? What's the job?
I think you said it. So it's unconditional love. I do love you. I will always love you. So it's unconditional love. I do love you and I care for you. But I think it's the other thing you said is to show them as much of the world as possible. But I look upon showing them the world as what experiences can I give them to grow. And so I'm always looking at what experience to grow, some skill set to grow themselves, so that I try to grow a complete person. But I look at the concept of an empty tabula rasa, they say, where you are the native talents what your parents gave you, the DNA and the RNA, Now, what experience is starting in the womb? The experience is an education that you have. So like you said, you want to show her as much of the world as possible. And so I am much better. I was a great dad for my first brood that are in the 50s now, but I'm much better now because I'm more mindful, really, of what I'm doing. So when I give, stories 10, when I give her, when she's had a trampoline, from the earliest moment she could use it, that's important. And so we play air hockey every day. We don't miss because it's fun. And it's dad and it's daughter. But I look at the unbelievable skill she has at banging that puck around. And so it's not just fun, but I'm looking at eye-hand coordination, and I'm looking at this business, not just a video game on the computer screen, but I'm looking at real-world geometry and engineering and that stuff.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about modeling physics. It's physics.
Yes, and at the age of 8, she had her own all-terrain vehicle. Everyone can't do this, but it's tinkering in the garage. She drove 2 John Deeres, 2 Kubotas. She got a dirt bike now. She drives the family car. And all of this is a theme park. It's fun, but I'm thinking of the geometry. I'm thinking of the engineering. I'm thinking of the physical world. I am sure that I give her every kind of device. She has every device there is. I guess it's a privilege that I can give her both Windows and Mac and iPhone and iPad and all the rest of that stuff.
The tools of modern life.
The tools, but that sort of happens. So it's like you said, it's unconditional love, but how much of the world can you give her? We go to Oshkosh Air Show next week, and she'll take all of that in. And so once school was out, she's traveled with me, except for this trip, which came up a little late. She's traveled with me everywhere I go this summer, and so it's just to show her the world. She was on Oahu, and she's been meeting Marines, and so she sees Marines. And she says, "What is a Marine?" Well, so she'll learn what a Marine is, and so it's like you said. It's just to show them enough of the world so they can build a broad skill set.
And find their passions.
And find their passions, but like you said also, you said it, find their passions. I never guide this way.
Exactly.
Never. It's their life, not mine. And so I'm very careful about that. It's their life, not mine. And it's the passions and the dreams that make for what you choose, the opportunities you choose. I just help her go wherever she wants to go. So that I think that's also very important. And later on, I think it's very important when to start letting them go and become their friend and not just their dad. So you transition to being not just a dad, but a friend, and that's very important. Starting around 10 or 11 or somewhere in there.
Well, and all we can do is our best.
Yeah, and it's a little depressing, but I'm so surprised at sometimes the outcome. You think you've had just a perfect uprising, and it didn't turn out. And other times it didn't turn out when it should have. Until you get out of adolescence, and adolescence is not puberty, so you have the teenage world, the puberty world, and the adolescent world, and there may be different worlds. Until you get through that, you don't know what you have. And you can have radical forks in the road. And you say, where did that come from? I don't know where that came from. But
Exactly.
So.
Story, thank you so much for
You're
spending
welcome.
some
Gee,
time.
this is exciting.
A pleasure.
Yeah, as always.
That's a cut.